A mystery in the Mediterranean, the possible torpedoing of a Russian ship to stop the Kremlin handing submarine nuclear reactors to North Korea, begins in a quiet Spanish port.
This really is the craziest of stories about a Russian shadow fleet ship that sank off the coast here in the strangest of circumstances, whose Russian captain confessed to investigators here that it was carrying 2 nuclear reactors, possibly for a submarine headed for an unknown destination, the wreckage of all of which the Russian military spent a huge amount of time and effort destroying.
The incident is shrouded in silence, but concerns the most serious of issues: weapons proliferation between 2 nuclear powers and force being used to stop it. The Ursa Major ship loaded up near St. Petersburg in early December 2024, on paper bound for Vladivostok, with a cargo of 2 huge cranes and over 100 empty containers. It made another stop, loading 2 large manhole covers. You can see them in blue here, along with 2 white pill-shaped objects, which will later prove important. It set sail, a shadow fleet ship used by Russia in Syria. The Portuguese Navy followed it from above. You can see the blue covers here, until just before it ran into trouble in Spanish waters.
It was way further out to sea when the Ursa Major, on the 22nd of December 2024, suddenly slowed, and Spanish rescuers noticed this and they radioed to ask if anything was wrong. The ship insisted it was fine and could deal with the situation.
But about 24 hours later, it made a sharp deviation and issued an urgent call for help. The boat was listing, this video shows, filmed from a nearby tanker, but probably not going to sink too fast. The captain of the ship later told investigators he'd seen a 50 centimetre by 50 centimetre hole in the hull, the damaged metal facing inwards, a source close to the investigation said. The captain said it had been followed by 3 explosions on the starboard side of the boat, killing 2 of his crew.
So the Russian military arrive in force and they tell everyone to stay 2 nautical miles away from their ship, the Ursa Major. But the Spanish know they need to conduct rescue operations, so they send this ship to pick up 14 Russian survivors who were brought back here, and that includes the Russian captain, who it seems starts to help investigators piece together some of what's happened. But it's hours later that day that the mood changes over the Ursa Major ship, and the Russian military fire flares over it, and then a series of explosions follow, which Spanish seismic sensors picked up, and they send the ship to the seabed floor.
Moscow demanded their crew back too fast, but it didn't happen immediately.
Spanish rescuers brought the 14 Russian surviving crew to this hotel, and it's here where the Russian captain started telling investigators key information. Now, there's been near silence from the Spanish government about this incident, but they've recently released this statement confirming that the Russian captain confessed here to investigators his ship was carrying 2 nuclear reactors, probably meant for submarine use. And he also said he simply wasn't sure if those reactors had fuel in them.
There's no evidence of any contamination. The captain also told investigators he thought he would not stop first at Vladivostok, but instead be told to divert to the North Korean port of Rason, according to the investigation source. That could explain why the extra cranes were needed to help lift the reactors safely. Russia was in North Korea's debt at that time. Kim Jong-un had 2 months earlier sent troops to help Russia's invasion of Ukraine, leaving analysts curious as to what the Kremlin had given him in return. In December 2025, North Korea would claim to have built this, their first nuclear-powered submarine. The Spanish investigation surmised a likely reactor would be this, the VM-4SG, shown in a Russian submarine here on state TV. Its dimensions are not public, but CNN analysis shows reactor vessels match the shape of at least one of the white objects seen in St. Petersburg's container port on December the 4th, both gone by December the 11th, when the ship had left.
If these reactors have come out of decommissioned submarines, then they will be radioactive, although obviously not as much as if they were fully loaded with fuel.
How incredibly rare is this kind of transfer of technology? This is quite serious stuff,
It
right?
is very. It's not something that's undertaken lightly, and it's only something that's ever done between very close allies.
So it's a major move by Moscow
Absolutely.
to decide to do this.
Very, very.
Troubling?
Potentially, yes, particularly if you're South Korea.
Everything may have been on the bottom of the sea, but the Russians weren't done yet. And according to a source familiar with the investigation, about a week after the incident, a Russian research vessel called the Yantar, linked in the past to all sorts of allegations against Moscow, sat over the wreckage for about 5 days, and 4 more explosions followed, possibly the Russians destroying what was left of the wreckage.
In the months after, the US may have shown interest in the site, twice sending a rare WC-135R Constant Phoenix, usually secretly sniffing out traces of nuclear activity in Russia's Arctic or over Iran, over the path of the Ursa Major, weaving low at 5,000 feet. One had flown a similar route 13 months earlier, perhaps suggesting its routine. The aircraft's US base declined to provide any details. Spanish lawmakers have urgently sought answers, but got few.
Cuando alguien no te dice claramente y no te da la información claramente y extensa de lo que pides, por lo menos sospechas que te está escondiendo algo, por supuesto que sí. La caja negra nos han dicho que se ha hundido con el barco, que está a 2.500 metros de profundidad y que la operación hace, por su alto riesgo, imposible. Entonces yo creo que la caja negra la tiene alguien, pero claro, no sabemos si es el gobierno de España o los propios rusos que la han localizado, ¿no?
So why did the ship sink? The Spanish investigation said the first impact was likely from a projectile called a supercavitating torpedo that fires air in front of itself to reach very high speed. Others point to something simpler.
The hole in the hull that the captain talked about, 0.5 metre by 0.5 metre.
Yeah.
What could make something like that?
From the description I've seen, and the description you've given, that hole to me sounds like a limpet mine. It sounds like a shaped charge explosive that was placed against the hull by somebody or something and detonated.
The Russian owners immediately called the sinking a targeted terrorist attack. They, the Russian, Spanish and British militaries, did not reply to a request for comment, and the Pentagon declined to. There are few Western militaries operating there, capable of noticing, tracking and stopping a cargo like this. All sides, it seems, happy for this secret to stay on the sea floor.